What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Real State of Retail podcast. This is episode number 4, and I hope you are already tuned in to episode number 3 with the amazing Wilbur Breslin. Today we have Beth Azor from Azor Advisory Services with us, and Beth is a friend, somebody that I admire in the commercial real estate field. She's doing amazing things. She just released a book, which you'll hear about. And she's using digital media in a very creative way, and that's what connected us. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Check it out. Welcome to the Real State of Retail podcast. We are your hosts, Jason Ciano and Russell Helbling.
We are retail and real estate experts that focus on emerging concepts in the food, fitness, and wellness sector with a flair for social media and digital marketing.
In this podcast, we'll be discussing the post-internet impact on the retail and real estate industries.
Each episode will feature inspirational guests and thought leaders in their respective fields, giving their input on how they believe retail and real estate will look tomorrow.
Now let's get it poppin'. So we are here with the one and only Beth Azor, close friend of mine, an absolute beast in the commercial real estate space. Also, I want to say, somebody that I admire for using social media heavily and subscribing to Gary V's method as well as many other people's methods, but that's kind of how we connected initially. It's just awesome to finally have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Russell.
By the way, this was supposed to happen yesterday.
Oh, great.
We won't go into that, but we had to reschedule for today.
Yeah, we can tell them.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the audience
Dumb
why?
Blonde, yes.
Go ahead.
So we were in the Uber and frantically trying to get from the airport to the hotel, drop off my luggage to turn around and come here. And in New York, I'm from Fort Lauderdale,
yeah.
so I don't really do the Uber thing or the taxi thing. And there are bikers that
you
come
die.
Sweeping by the car.
Dangerous.
So we opened our door and there was a biker that swept by and it kind of freaked me out. So I then, he's like, wait! So the Uber driver, and so then the biker left and I said, okay, we gotta go. And I ran out of the Uber car and we went up to our hotel and we went to the desk to check in and I looked down and no purse.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh,
did your
crap.
stomach go into your throat? That's like.
Well, I was happy I had my phone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was too.
Because
we would have been waiting a long time.
I was like, So then, and then I was right then tipping the guy. Like I was on the Uber app to tip, and so I doubled the tip. And then I thought I'd have that number.
Yeah.
But when once the transaction's complete, you lose the phone number of the guy. Who knew?
Right.
So then there's this application process of I lost something in my Uber. Will you agree to pay $15? And here's the number. So the whole time.
By the way, they can up that to are you willing to pay $1,000? And you would have.
I did that. So for an hour while you and I were texting back and forth, and I'm saying to Josie, my A number one who's with me this weekend. I said, at some point we have to start canceling the credit cards. So she's like, well, we can just freeze them. I'm like, okay, start the freezing process after 30 minutes. And then this is why you're very nice to your Uber drivers, because right about then, about an hour into it, where I'm praying to St. Anthony, because if you're Catholic, you pray to St. Anthony for lost things.
That's
and
right.
Then the phone number rings and I said, 1, and he goes, Miss Beth, and I'm like, he goes, I have your purse, and I'm like,
wow.
And I have your $100.
Hey.
How fast can you get back to my hotel?
Amazing.
And then, but by then I had missed doing this podcast, so I had texted you, dumb blonde,
but you got to have a true New York experience.
It was truly a New York day. So now, of course, now we've taken 7 Ubers, and I make sure I check before I get out of the Uber.
I told you when I saw you this morning, my biggest fear when I get out of the Uber is, did I leave anything behind?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
But what a great New York experience that they came back. Everything was in place. He got a big bonus. Everything's happy. The only problem was we had to reschedule.
Well, listen, it didn't end up so bad for us. We ended up filling that space, and we did a podcast.
Awesome.
And we're here now.
Fabulous.
So let's dive in.
Okay.
All right. So, Beth, how did you get into commercial real estate?
So my parents were in real estate. I got my license when I was 18 while I was in college, did the whole residential thing. And then after college, I got a job with a not-for-profit making a whopping $11,000 a year, which is about 30 today. And on the weekends, I did residential. After 2 years, my not-for-profit salary went from 11 to 23, which is like, 30 to 45. And I was working 7 days a week because I was doing residential on the weekends. And my executive director, God love her, came up to me one day and said, "We love you, but your ambition exceeds us at the not-for-profit. I'm the executive director and I don't make much more than what you're making.
Sure.
Why don't you go do the real estate gig full-time and volunteer for us?" How great was that as a boss?
Sure.
So I'm like, good idea, because I was tired of working 7 days a week. So I went and did the real estate thing, which was residential on the weekend. And in about a month, I was miserable because I went from working 7 days a week to sitting in a trailer at a luxury residential development. And I went to the developer and I said, "We need to have a marketing program." He goes, No. We're building luxury homes. You sit in the trailer reading People magazines, and when people walk in, sell them. And I'm like, I'm going to kill myself. So after a couple months, someone I knew said, "You should get into commercial real estate." And I said, "Gross. That's selling land." I thought it was selling land. That's more boring than this. They said, no. There's this thing called leasing. I go, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "Oh, developers build shopping centers, and you are the leasing agent, and you help a bagel shop open for their American dream. They come over here and from Cuba or wherever, and that you help them open their bagel shop, and you're invited to every bar mitzvah, christening, wedding. You're part of the family."
Sure.
And I said, "Done. Sign me up." And I said, "Well," she said, "there's this company in Miami called Terra Nova, and they have a training program. Call there." So I called up and I said, "Who's in charge of your training program?" And they said, "Oh, this woman by the name of Donna Abood." And I went, "Donna Abood from Florida State?" And they said, "Yeah." Well, she was a sorority sister of mine.
Wow.
And I called her up and she goes, "Beth from Florida State?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "You're hired. Just come meet the boss."
Amazing.
So there was 11 people at the company, and I joined them. And the day I walked in, like goosebumps. Like I said, I am meant to be here and in this business. And I was there 18 years in that company.
18 years and rose to what level?
President.
I thought so.
Wow.
So I went from...
You're so humble. You didn't even go there. Yeah, I had to pull it out of you.
Yeah, I worked there.
I was an associate.
Rookie leasing agent where we shared a rent-a-center. Do you guys have rent-a-center?
Sure.
We had a rent-a-center table.
Yeah.
We're 4 rookies with a box, and that was our conference room. So when the boss had a meeting in the conference room, the 4 rookies had to take our boxes and go somewhere else.
Right.
And we went, when I left the company in 2004, I had been the president for 6 years, and we had 150 employees.
That could have been like the first WeWork, by the way.
Yeah.
The box.
We went to WeWork yesterday. Pipeline, the girls from Pipeline had a cocktail party, and it was so cool, the WeWork thing.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
So, and I'm sure we'll get there because retail is evolving tremendously. This is my 18th New York ICSC, which is pretty crazy.
You're so young. You look so good. You started
thank
when you were 9? Or?
Yeah, 11.
Yeah.
So, but it's so interesting to watch how the industry is evolving. Clearly, retail has a different meaning today than it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, although what's so interesting about our space and why I think you and I are doing it differently and understand kind of the new world is things are changing so much faster than they used to, and what used to, I think, change in like, let's say a decade now changes in like 6 months. What's your take on that, and where do you think how do you think that's going to change the role of a broker, let's say, in the industry?
Oh, there's 5 hours in that question.
I know,
that answer.
but touch on it.
I think, so you and I went to Agent 2021 last year, right? The Gary Vaynerchuk event where there was real estate agents. And I was telling someone today, I think there were, 4 commercial agents there?
Yeah,
Me, you.
at most, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, like 4 or 5 of us.
Right.
What he talked about and what they talked about was that there would be no broker for the agent. That the broker, like the house, would be removed,
right?
And then I think Ryan Serhant was there speaking, and he said, if there are brokers or agents out there doing personal branding,
right?
What does the broker bring to the table, right? Now, of course, I think the broker brings a lot to the table, but I do see that in the next few years, if people jump on the bandwagon.
Right.
We have seen very little of that.
Very little. On the commercial side.
On the commercial side,
Yeah.
right. Someone asked me today, what percentage do you think of the commercial industry people are using social media as a personal branding? And I said, I think it's 1%. And they went, really? I go, okay, let's say I'm wrong and it's 10%.
It's not 10%.
But it's not 10.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
It might be 3.
Right.
We are very slow to change.
Yes.
We
collectively, as a group,
Agent.
the industry,
We're an
the
old,
industry.
stodgy industry.
right.
Yeah.
And then someone said to me, well, is it because of the age? And because of the recession, we lost a whole generation
Yeah.
of people coming into the industry,
true,
right?
so true.
So you've got, the older generation. I call the older women the well-heeled women, right?
Makes
So
sense, yeah.
the vets.
Yeah.
And then you have the newbies, and we are missing this. So I think it may take us generations to get to the 20 to 30-year-olds to jump in to the extent we're doing it. I really
Sure.
believe it's going to take a long time.
I agree.
At least for our side of the business. So we're just a slow-moving, slow-changing industry,
Yeah.
But I do think the whole thing with retail, it's now how many articles, we went through 5 years of retail's dead to now retail's not dead and online retail are adding bricks and mortar.
Right.
It's like, hello, not something we in the industry already knew, that if you have a bricks and mortar and an online store, your sales are much better than, like 30 to 40% better.
Right.
So if, Macy's closes a store, their online sales go down.
Right.
Right? So now today at the ICSC conference, there was a whole panel with 6 online retailers who are adding bricks and mortar.
Which one? What tenants were they? Because
Oh
I
my
missed that.
gosh,
I
you're
went
going to
to-
ask me that.
Well, even if it's a
Allbirds,
few,
Untucked.
Allbirds.
Thank you.
Obviously,
all those.
right?
Some weird,
some that I didn't know.
like Lily something yeah. But there were like 5
Casper.
or 6. No, I don't think
Casper
Casper.
wasn't there, but yeah, it was a cool section. I didn't really get to check it out. I just kind of walked by.
Yeah.
There was like a big, like a little write up on neighborhood goods and all these other concepts, a 4-post, and that's the
Listen,
future.
absolutely, but I think, and we were talking about this on the ride back to the hotel to meet you. I was saying, I agree that retail's not dead. I agree, kind of like Gary Vee, right? You have to kind of do everything. Should I be on Instagram? Should I be on LinkedIn? Should I be on Facebook?
Right.
Yes, right? So I do think that retailers need to do both and do both really well. But I still don't think that the online retailers that are actually rolling out brick and mortar are going to fill all the space that's vacant.
They're definitely not.
Right. So who is?
So I think medical.
Right.
I think education.
Right.
I think our educational system is really messed up, and I think we're going to see major changes in that space. But another slow-moving, slow-changing industry.
Absolutely.
But depending on our economies and what happens with taxes and charter schools, I just think there's more education that's going to come in.
Definitely.
And
I
being
think.
placed in a retail setting.
Yeah, I think in malls, I think you could see a Dillard's become a charter school, right? Or do you have Dillard's up here?
Yeah. No, we don't up here.
Okay, but
Yeah,
department
no.
stores,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that you see hospitals. I think you see high schools.
We're already seeing that, definitely.
Yeah, so-
public libraries. I mean, absolutely.
I mean, hospital systems taking old supermarkets.
Yeah, but that changes the dynamic of the property and has an impact in a positive or negative way on co-tenancy. So let's transition for a second. And can you put your landlord hat on?
Absolutely.
All right,
For
so-
sure, I own 6 shopping centers.
Yeah,
That's my most comfortable place.
I know, and that was my segue. So I signed a contract with Beth when we met in March
Yes.
that I was going to buy a property before March. It's not looking that good.
Come on.
Not for lack of trying.
But
by the way.
I have a deal, not
Okay?
my deal.
That you're going to put me in so I can actually.
Yes, and then you're going to be able to
See
live
that,
up to your
people?
commitment
Yeah,
and
you're
promise.
making the contract work.
I mean,
I love
right
it.
here. Everybody should podcast just so people put them in their deals
Yes.
to make sure that they.
Hey, I'm on this podcast too, guys.
Yeah, you're in, you're
exactly,
in.
you're
it's
in.
not my deal, but I'm putting money in. I really believe in the deal. And it's
Okay.
Miami, so you'll
Excellent.
be able to, yeah.
I love Miami.
Yeah, I know you do.
Love that. So when you started in the industry, was becoming an owner an important thing to you, or was it not even on the horizon, something you didn't even
No
think of
clue.
until later?
Yeah, no clue. My boss came to me one day and said, we're buying a Publix shopping center, which is a supermarket center. You want to put any money in? And I said, I don't have any money. I was like 28. He's like, okay, well, and then they bought it, they increased some rents, refied it, and everyone got their money back. I said, oh, the next time he asks, I got to be ready. He asked 3 years later, I had no money. This time though, I guess I was valuable, and he took me to a local bank and he co-signed a $50,000 note for me. So I was able to invest $50,000.
Wow.
Oh, La Colette's here.
Our sponsor has arrived.
Our
sponsor has arrived.
the coffee provider of the hotel that we're in, is now delivering coffee and
Coffee and
pizza.
a pizza.
And pizza. Don't tell anyone. So we can keep going.
All right, so
Russell will come back and join us.
So he co-signs a loan, and then I increase the rents, and then we refi out, and I get my money back. And so then I got the bug. So now I'm like, oh my gosh. So at that point, so that was 1992, I was 32. From that point on, 10% of every commission check went into this not touch account so that I could start investing. And
That's
then
brilliant, by the way.
Amazing.
the 10%?
Yes,
So
I love that.
Everyone do it. So
Back
10% every commission. I then purchased, while I was still at that company, 4 more deals, invested in 4 more deals.
What types of real estate?
All retail. Power center, local strip center, grocery anchored center.
Amazing.
So small pieces, we would joke that we owned a blade of grass. But hey, blades of grass become, bushes and trees, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I left in 2004 that company to raise my son and be more involved as a parent, because when you're running a big company with 150 employees, it's crazy. And my nanny was basically raising my son. I was a single mother, and I said, I didn't have a kid at 40 to have my nanny raising my son, so that's why I left. But my goal was to buy a deal every 2 years. So that would be my goal. I'm going to buy a shopping center every 2 years. I've been gone 15 years. I own 6 deals. I gave back a deal and 3 pieces of land. So I'm beyond where I acquired more than my goal, which is great.
Amazing. And I think a lot of us, even if we're not conscious of the fact that we'd like to own real estate, when we start in the industry, it becomes a goal of ours very quickly. The biggest challenge is kind of the quicksand effect of being a broker and living paycheck to paycheck and not having the money when the opportunities come, but finding creative ways to find the money and bet on yourself, and actually getting the assistance of people who are trying to give you opportunity and help you is really critical. So.
Well, I think the discipline, the discipline of not raising your lifestyle to these commissions that are rolling in, right? Like, we do that.
Yeah,
we
of
buy the
course.
bigger cars, we buy the boats, we buy the houses, and so the discipline is pay yourself first.
Right.
Put that 10% in or 5% in or whatever first, and then while you start thinking, okay, one day I want to start talking to people who are doing it, or talking to people saying I want to do it, or let me know when you're doing it, because maybe I have. So my mission, in my latest mission, I like to have lots of them, is I want every leasing agent to be an investor, because if you talk to anyone in our industry who's buying real estate, the guy or girl that's the most valuable is the leasing agent.
Right.
And all these people are making $1 gazillion based on the wisdom and market knowledge of the leasing agent. And who's the guy that's not benefiting from wealth because of these acquisitions and purchases? The leasing agent.
Absolutely. And we're actually the last to get paid, even when our payments due.
Right. Well,
that's a whole nother
shame
story.
on those landlords. So my last deal that I bought, I had 4 leasing agents that I invited to come in at $5,000 a piece. And I think one threw in 10. I always say to people when I'm buying stuff, only give me what you can afford to lose. Because real estate is risky.
Of course.
And oh, by the way, don't ever call me about it. I'll give you quarterly reports and then leave me alone. But I just think it's so important that the people that are doing the deals are investing.
Right.
And not, it's not just based on your last check or your last commission.
Absolutely. I think that's the best advice that anybody can give anybody that's at any stage of being a leasing agent.
So I hear you're writing a book.
I wrote a book.
No, it's out.
It's out.
Come on.
It's coming.
Oh,
it's
coming
being
out.
delivered December 15th, which is
Okay.
now in 2 weeks.
That's like
It's
around the
been
corner.
written. We've sold about 130 copies.
And what's it called?
It's called
Don't Say No for the Prospect.
Don't Say No for the Prospect.
Amazing. Tell us about that. What does that mean?
So that means, I've worked with a lot of leasing agents over the years, and I train, companies across the country, from the Kimcos of the world to, the dad and son who work in Indiana.
Sure.
And subconsciously or unconsciously, we, all people, not just leasing agents, but all people, we put these barriers in our heads, right? So when I go and teach and train, I'll say, did you consider talking to the guy across the street to move? Oh, he would never.
Right.
He would never.
Don't say no for the prospect.
So I always say, don't say no for the prospect. Ask, what's the worst thing that could happen? He says no. Well, when you didn't ask, he said no.
Right.
So you have to ask.
Absolutely.
And it's this common theme for 15 years that people, they're afraid of rejection, or they just aren't creative, or they're scared, whatever it is.
Sure.
So the book is a bunch of stories about how that I have lived through, where I didn't say, where I maybe said no for the prospect and then learned my lesson, or when other people, so it's all stories. It's
That's
fun.
great.
It's when you're reading the book, it looks like we're talking just like this.
Absolutely. And part of when I've known, obviously, about Don't Say No for the Prospect, but I was simply saying that when I started early in the business, we used to say, don't be judge and jury, because a lot of our brokers the first thing that they say when you suggest something is they give you their opinion of why it's not going to work.
Their opinion.
Their opinion of
Not
why
the
it's not.
prospects.
Exactly. And, I think everybody can learn that lesson really quickly, because you don't know everything, and I always say crazier things have happened.
Right. Well, I always say, like you just said, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They say no.
Right.
But then maybe you sort of dialogue about something else.
Right.
And you say, well, it's no to this, but okay, well, then where do you want to go?
Exactly.
Not to mention,
or why don't
right.
you want to go? Like
Right.
I was just talking to someone today at the conference, and there was a Starbucks deal, and my client had a property next to where there was going to be a Starbucks deal, and I think this is in Atlanta, and the Starbucks deal was faltering. But the leasing agent had given up. Like, they had called a few times. That deal's happening. They're in a meeting with Starbucks. Starbucks says, our deal's not happening. Would you do this with a curb cut? And the landlord, my client, says, no. How about a build a suit in the parking lot? And Starbucks is like, really? So again, you have to ask. I had a client once we had a former Kmart, and they wanted to do a Costco deal. And my best friend was representing Costco. So I'm like calling her, can we put Costco in this location? No. Can we put Costco in this location? No. I mean, literally 9 times I asked her. And finally my client was like, I'm done with you, Beth. You can't make this happen. Right? Knife to the heart. I want a meeting at Costco. Mm-hmm. So I call my friend and I'm like, okay, my client is done with me and you, and he wants to go directly to Seattle to meet with these people. And she's like, okay, I'll set it up, So we prepared this, big market package. I don't get to go to the meeting. So my boss and this guy, and our client, flies to Seattle and comes back with the frickin' Costco deal.
Really?
Because she was saying no.
I think that she was saying no. And then, but I do believe, I am a big believer that get in front of the people with some information.
Yeah.
It's kind of easy to say no on the phone and without being in the market.
Yes.
So when you can go to a retailer's headquarters and have a face-to-face, or with tenant rep, do you guys up here do landlords come to your office and do portfolio reviews?
Yeah, of course.
We just did 2 last week. I literally know all these brokers.
Mm-hmm.
Kara and I did this 2 last week, and we've gotten 3 or 4 potential deals out of it.
Sure.
Because we sat in a room and we talked.
Absolutely.
Versus not at an ICSE where it's frenetic.
Yeah, so there's 2 things I want to touch on. A lot was said, and in the commercial real estate business, it's an information business and it's a relationship business. So if you reach out to somebody on a piece of information that you think is interesting to share with them, a property that they might be interested in, a tenant that a landlord might be interested in, if it doesn't work there, at a minimum, you're touching them, you're relevant to them, they're paying attention, right? And that transitions into social media in a major way.
For sure.
In addition to that, I think that it's the difference between a good broker and an amazing broker / advisor. I hate the word broker, by the way. I don't consider myself one because I turn more deals away from my clients than I make because I'm not out for a fee. I'm out to do the right thing, and doing the right thing is always the right thing.
Yes.
We could talk about that forever. That's another reference.
My favorite quote.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. And it's how I am where I am in the industry, unlike a lot of other people. And I think that's the biggest difference today, and that's the biggest challenge for a lot of brokers in the industry in the future when there's less tenants making deals and the economy turns, and that's inevitable. It's not if, it's when. There's going to be another shakeout, clearly, of people who are not doing the right thing and actually playing a major role in helping understand what makes somebody tick and helping them multiply, duplicate wins, and limit their losses and failures. And that's why I consider myself more of an advisor, because that's what I pride myself on. But if you're picking up the phone, or if you're sending somebody, a tenant like a Costco, information on something that doesn't make sense, it's very easy to get interest from somebody when the story's told properly. And I think that's the biggest difference between a good broker and a great broker advisor, that you have instant credibility when you know exactly what they look for. And even if what you're suggesting or putting in front of them doesn't appear that way at first glance, when you explain why they should pay attention to it, that's the difference.
For sure.
So if she flew to Seattle with something that didn't make sense for them, even though they might have glanced over it, and that person didn't have the story and didn't understand what makes them tick, no, you can get on a plane, you're not coming back with a deal.
But that goes back to understanding why it was a no.
Right.
And you might believe it. You know in your heart of hearts it's right. We'll find out why they said no, and then come back with all the data that shows them why it shouldn't be no and it should be yes.
Yeah.
But also this, I think also this happened. That was over about a 6 to 8 month period. Man, stuff changes.
Oh, yeah.
Time changes. Things change. And that's why it's so important to have a CRM program, so that you keep up and you keep following up, because things change. Right? I mean,
Absolutely.
A retailer could say no, 3 months ago, and it's a different story today because maybe they're a public company, they missed Wall Street's expectations, they need to open so many stores, and all of a sudden your store that was the B site is all of a sudden an A site.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, another big challenge for brokers and agents, is when you hear no from somebody, you just assume it's always going to be a no. And that's what's so challenging about our business, right? You have to be so self-motivated and aware of the fact that things change. And I tell all of my people that a deal's never dead. If you're working on a deal, I love when a newer broker gets really discouraged because a deal, quote unquote, died. The deal didn't die. There's just an impasse. Let time go by. Talk to both sides. There's going to be a solution. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. But never look at it as dead. That's a major mistake.
Well, look at it as another opportunity, because even if, let's say, I look at it, if it is that particular deal is dead, well, let's figure out how to do a different deal.
Well, and how about this?
Or pivot to do something. Just pivot and do something else.
In South Florida, we have a little group of people, and once a quarter we get together and we talk about our dead deals.
Smart.
And the 4 or 5 people in a room, it might have been dead for me. It's not dead for you.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
And we leave that quarterly meeting with, Jason's 5 dead deals could be 1 for Russell and 1 for me.
That's amazing.
So
Smart.
think about doing that.
And that's with other brokers.
Yes, competitors.
And they're
Other landlord leasing agents, not tenant rep brokers. So
Right.
these are landlord leasing agents who we may own 10 shopping centers amongst the 5 of us, or 30. Then we come once a quarter and we bring, okay, I didn't make a deal with this nail salon because of this reason, or da-da-da. And everyone come with their 5 dead deals. Usually something happens, and we don't take any fee from each other. It's
Right.
just a share, because if we can all increase our occupancy, what the heck does to our rental rates?
Right. Absolutely.
So if
All
you
ships
get my
rise.
if you get my dead deal, good for you.
Right.
I'm not saying, and now you owe me 10%. That's not doing the right thing.
I agree.
I
right,
mean,
well, then it'll come back to you. Just
right,
right?
of
So-
course. So think about that,
That's amazing.
a
I
great
love
idea.
that. Yeah.
because your dead deal is someone else's not dead deal.
Sure.
Well, listen, I'm all about that because, again, sharing information creates deals. And we're very open and willing to share, but I'm not sure that all of the brokerage firms that are in our space are willing to do the same, So I think it really depends on the individual in a lot of ways, and I think that a lot of the cultures actually of companies that we're constantly, around, essentially other brokerage firms, they're not as, they're not as friendly or not as willing to share information.
I think we can pick a select few.
They're lost.
Yeah, I agree. No,
They're
totally.
lost, right?
But I think it's the mentality. Yeah.
So, well, it's
small-minded.
It's kind of like 2 years ago, I looked around and I said, I really need to learn more about this social media thing. Like 2 years ago, I wasn't even on Facebook, right?
What inspired that though? Like, where did
Gary
Vaynerchuk. But how did you discover Gary?
So, I read Crush It, the first one.
Yeah.
In like 2009, I was getting ready to give a big keynote, 6 hours.
Okay.
Wow.
And I don't know, I picked up the book and I was on a cruise and I read the whole book and he just inspired me. But then I forgot about him and I went about my thing. And then I don't know how I found him again, but 2 years ago I found him. And the more you listen to him, you're like, okay, there's 200 million people on Facebook, and I'm not one of them.
Right.
So who's right here? Not me.
Right.
So I started getting into it, and then I started seeing the value of it from the branding. I think I already considered myself a good brand person with good brand.
Sure.
But I thought, here's a way for me to expand that with content, and I already had the content. So where was I going with that? Sorry.
Well, first off, when you say that you were already somebody that had a good brand, are you saying that you, in the commercial real estate industry, you had a good reputation and people knew you? Do you consider that a personal brand, or when you say brand, what do you mean by that?
So I think people knew me from being a good teacher.
Right.
People knew me for being a giver.
Right.
If someone would call, there wasn't, how much are you going to pay me? If
Right.
I have a problem with this deal and I heard that, you came and taught our company, but someone said you were a good resource, or have you done a deal with Lowe's and can I pick your brain? So I think people knew me as a giver.
Sure.
I always wear red, so people know me as the girl in red, right?
It's funny because Brittany said,
I bet she's going to wear red.
I think I saw Beth earlier at this booth, and then later on I asked her to go grab you downstairs. I said she'll be in red.
Exactly.
That's funny. I actually asked, I said, was she in red? She goes, yes, she was.
Yeah, so...
that's amazing, by the way. It's a wonderful thing. No, it's brilliant.
Well, and people... what happened was I used to wear red a lot, and then one ICSC I didn't wear red, and they're like, "Where's your red?" And I'm like,
"Oh, we're gonna run with this."
Yes, exactly.
And what color is the button?
Don't say no for the press.
Red.
How to do that?
And my business cards, everything is red. So my iPad.
So what does personal brand mean to you? What is a personal brand? I'm going.
People that that will remember you and why.
Okay.
Like I've had people. So I say, we have 30,000 of our friends that show up in Vegas every year.
Yep.
Okay. How do you set yourself apart?
Right.
And I had a young kid from Charleston, and he goes, well, how can I set myself apart? And he was like 6'7". He was like, I go, well, you're pretty tall, right? I go, but you're from Charleston. Why don't you start wearing a bow tie?
Right.
And he started wearing a bow tie, and people remembered.
Sure.
I remember 2 girls. I hired 2 girls to work with me as junior leasing agents, and they both came in the same day. They're sitting across from my desk. They both have blonde hair. They both have brown eyes, and I'm like, okay. Tomorrow, one of you have to come in with something different, because you will always be associated and confused with each other.
Yeah.
So to figure it out. I don't know what it is, but this is not going to work.
Right.
You will not be successful. And the next day, one of the girls, the smarter of the 2 girls, came in, and she had horn-rimmed glasses, but without the fake glasses.
Yeah.
And she immediately, okay, now I know you're you and you're her. And she would wear these fake glasses until she built her own brand of intelligence and deal making or whatever.
Amazing.
But in the beginning, I said, you got to do something.
Yeah.
And some people are lucky. We've got this guy, this rock star in South Florida. His name is Hugh Chen. He's the only Asian in our industry.
Yeah, of
He's
course.
a rock star. Everyone knows
I know
him.
Hugh a long time. He left the industry for a minute.
He did.
I remember that.
He called me up and he goes, you know what? I just saw Milton Cooper
Yes.
at an ICSC, and Milton said, all y'all should go fishing for the next 2 years. This was in 2009.
I remember.
And Hugh called me and he goes, do you think if I'm going to go travel for a year, do you think when I come back I could I'd still get a job? I go, 100%.
Yeah,
and I'll be your agent.
Yeah.
I'll be your representative. So he left. He called me after a year. He goes, I'm going to go for 9 more months, like another 8 months. I go. And then he came back and we met and he had no problem getting a job.
No, well, he was great before he left, at that time. So, I think that's an amazing, by the way, amazing piece of advice from Milton to, we talk about Milton all the time. I mean, he was so ahead of the medical thing.
Yeah.
When
was that? He spoke at Hofstra. This had to be almost 10 years ago.
He did a blurb for the back of my book.
Did he really?
Wow.
That's amazing.
So lucky.
And he was like telling you the future of retail is medical.
Yeah.
That's the future. I'm investing heavily in it. I believe in it. And we're all like, oh, okay.
Well, he was, and
he
pro
was,
health,
yeah,
right?
he was
His
right.
family.
Here's a story. Here's an example of Don't Say No for the Prospect in Milton Cooper.
Yeah.
So I'm a tenant rep. I'm a landlord and tenant rep agent, and young in my career, and I'm representing Baby Superstore, which was prior to Babies R Us.
Yeah.
And I needed to find them a location on this intersection, and Kimco had a shopping center with an empty anchor. So I call up the leasing agent from Kimco, and I said, I need 30,000 square feet. He goes, no, we just have 26. And I'm like, okay, but you can't figure out where to get another 4? And the leasing agent said no. And I said, okay. So I go to the center, and I see that they've got literally 30-foot sidewalks. So I called the leasing agent. I said, you guys need to punch out the front of your storefront and get me my 4,000 square feet. And the leasing agent's like, no. I go, I'm going to go over your head to your boss. I was young, and this guy had way more years than me. But I said, I need you to call your boss because I think I'm right, and maybe you're right, but let's not say no for the prospect.
That's right.
So Mike Flynn was his boss, and he said, no, I can't call Mike. I said, I'm going to call Mike. So I call Mike Flynn. Again, I have no idea how big this guy is.
Sure.
I go, Mr. Flynn, I represent Baby Superstore, and I'm looking at this site in Miami, and isn't there a way we could punch out? And he goes, absolutely. Punched it out, did the deal. Milton called me and said, thank you so much for not listening to our leasing agent.
That's amazing.
And they're still there. Well, now they're Babies R Us, and now they're probably not there anymore, but for 30 years. That tenant was there.
Is the leasing agent still there?
No, he's not. He's not.
I mean, that is so...
He's the king of no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's so commonplace, right? Where, you have to be able to think a little bit. That's not even thinking outside of the box. And not to mention the fact, for a space of that size,
But he's like, it would be too expensive. And I'm like,
too
okay,
expensive.
well, let's just evaluate
Let's
it.
talk about the economics of what that means before you're telling us that.
Exactly. And then, one more story, and then, we can move on or close up. But I was representing LA Fitness. And in South Florida at the time, LA had 36 locations in California and had never closed one, but no landlord wanted them in South Florida because gyms were passive. No one wanted a gym. Taboo.
Parking.
Right. And so a REIT owned a shopping center, a power center, and I called them up. I said, I represent LA Fitness. Can we oh, no, not interested. I'm like, well, before you say no, they have 36 in LA. They've never closed one, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no. We have anchors. I go, okay, you have Publix, Marshalls, Office Depot, and Circuit City. Do you remember Circuit City?
Of course.
Okay. So I said, they will restrict gyms, and we don't want to go ask them. So I said, can I go ask them? Okay, the tenant rep broker. And the guy says, well, why would we let you go? I go, because I think I can get them to say yes. And he goes, let me talk to my boss. They call back. I go, what do you have to lose?
Right.
So they call back, and they go, you can go ask the anchor tenants, but you cannot promise anything on our behalf.
Right.
Like nothing,
Right.
not $1. I'm like, great. So I called Publix. I had a phenomenal relationship with Publix. They said, of course. And the gym was it's a huge, 800,000 square foot power center. So where we were going to put the gym, the LA Fitness, was far away. Right. So Publix says yes. Marshalls, I was very good friends with Don Smith, who was the regional real estate guy's assistant, Vicky.
Okay.
Gatekeepers, very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So got Don Smith approval, no problem. Circuit City was my client, done. Now I'm down to Office Depot. I'm like, okay, I don't know anyone at Office Depot. I go to my CRM, so important, and I type in Office Depot, and this Ron Ricks comes up. I'm like, oh, and it says, met in Vegas at shopping center group party. He collects watches. And I'm like, and you sent him a Sky Mall picture of a watch. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I had no recollection of any of this. So I pick up the phone and I go, hey, Ron, you probably don't remember me. I met you last year in Vegas at one of the parties, Beth Azor. And he goes, Beth, you sent me the watch thing. I bought it. And I go, what do you need? And he gives me the approval. I got 4 waivers for a huge REIT. I call him up. I go, I got all the waivers. You just have to do the paperwork. And LA Fitness is in that location still to this day.
Wow.
That's it. That's one of the best real estate stories.
Don't say no for the prospect.
That is an unbelievable story.
I mean, tenant rep broker. What landlord would let a tenant rep broker call their anchor tenants?
None.
Right.
Yeah, but you got it done so much faster because they're such getting large landlord reps. When I say large, I mean obviously for sizable companies to move fast is. They're not.
You think they're allergic to doing deals half the time, right?
Completely, and it's very frustrating, especially when you have a ready, willing, and able tenant that belongs there. Very frustrating.
So a lot of times it seems like they just want to move the paper from here, and they want to put it over there, and then they want to move it from here, and they want to move it over there.
That's why in person
justifies their job.
In person.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer. Oh really? You're Ross, and you're in California. Let's go. Let's all meet.
Yeah.
And then the pressure of that is like, oh. We better move. And then they want to move the needle. They don't want to have the meeting. Okay, well, but if we can't do it, we need to come. And they're like, no, don't come. And then they move the needle a little faster.
Yeah, I mean, so before we wrap this up, I want to just kind of end on a social media kind of perspective, where you've come since you signed up for Facebook 2 years ago. Why do you think it's so important that our industry embraces social media? And people develop their personal brand and things of that nature, or do you think it's important?
Good question. I think that if you want to be successful in any industry, but certainly let's just talk about art. If you want to be successful in our industry, I think you have to have a presence on a platform. I know that Gary Vaynerchuk would say you have to be on all of them. So I'm not on Instagram.
Right.
I'm very little on Twitter, but I'm big on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, right? So I think you have to pick one, and probably the one where the majority of your customers are, right? And I think if you want to be successful, you have to be on it. It blows my mind, the people that are not on any platform. And they're like, well, we don't want to be on the platform because people are watching us. I mean, they're already watching you.
Exactly.
Right? It's crazy. So I think it's important because it's just part of our new world. It's like saying to someone in 1986, I'm not ever going to get a cell phone because I don't want to be bothered.
Right.
I think that's how important social media is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always done a really good job of making sure anytime that I meet somebody, I put out a newsletter on Fridays, and that I add every single person. Like the minute that I get a card, I'm texting my team to put that person into the newsletter, et cetera, et cetera. And early on in my career, I would go to as many cocktail parties, shake as many hands as possible. And I think that today, it's so much easier to have a presence on social media where people are seeing you in some capacity, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on YouTube, whatever it is. We're at Sabre, we're a little extreme for the industry. In other industries, we're not even scratching the surface.
Right.
But for commercial real estate and retail in particular, I think we're the only company vlogging, I would say. And I think it's such a loss for people. I think that. It's funny because I asked Gary a question at Agent 2021 last year, and I said something about how do you try to get people at my company? How do I try to get people at my company more involved in the vlog and so on and so forth? He's like, you can't sell the unsellable, that type of thing. And Ryan said the same thing. And I said, they're just invisible. He goes, they're effing invisible. And that's how the whole thing ended. I was like, such an impact. And who in this business wants to be invisible? It makes no sense to me.
I think that's fear.
Yeah.
Right? And it's fear of the unknown. I tell people, they go, well, I don't know how to do Facebook prospecting. I go, well, you didn't know how to drive either, and you figured that out.
Right.
which is what Gary says, right? So I think that I just believe social media is networking on steroids.
Absolutely.
And again, you can hit a wide, larger audience, but I do believe that people are using social media incorrectly in my, advice. I think that we have to be doing a lot of content and not just posting our listing flyers.
Totally.
Right.
You got to make some noise. You got to differentiate. People are not looking at the same mundane, basic shit in their feed that's constant.
Well, can I ask more like a tactical question?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So LinkedIn, I'm not LinkedIn savvy. I have a ton of connections on LinkedIn, but I'm definitely not leveraging them. We've talked about this yesterday. What are some tactics on LinkedIn to use that you found are effective that we could implement immediately? Because I know 2019 we're talking about going heavy in LinkedIn again. And I think you have 5,000 followers. I think I've got the same. And but how am I interacting with them other than posting in my timeline or whatever they call it there, or creating content that's better for there? Is video good there, or is written word good there, or do I want to just message people directly just to create connections and set up meetings? I don't know what's best.
So yes, and yes.
Yeah.
So I think you have to decide what's your avatar client, who's your client you want to reach on LinkedIn, right? So for me, my avatar client is someone that's going to hire me to train their people how to lease space. So I then produce content, video and written, and it fluctuates. 3 months ago, LinkedIn posted that written content was getting way more attention than video, but it changes. So I do a mixture, so I'm constantly doing content on, your lease, hey, leasing agents, here's my tip of the day, because that's my audience.
Right.
So if your audience is retailers that want to come to Long Island and Chelsea and all these markets, I don't know, like when I see you guys I'm up on the rooftop and look down at this intersection, phenomenal video. If I was a retailer, I gotta hire these guys, they know the market. So I think that if your avatar client is retailers expanding in New York, speak to them, write to them. So we've got a guy that is brand new in LinkedIn in South Florida, and he's been driving markets and posting unbelievable market information. And I'm so applauding this guy. If any retailers want to be in Palm Beach County, this guy's posting, so I drove Wellington today. Wellington has 43 shopping centers of da-da-da, and it's great stuff.
Right.
So again, pick your avatar customer and then speak to them. Just think, I'm only going to speak to, if I know you guys represent Starbucks, but I want to represent Lululemon in Long Island. Speak to Lululemon in Long Island.
Right.
And
know
then
your audience.
Other people will watch it and they'll go, well, so then Starbucks, someone's going to say, who should I hire in Long Island? And some chick in South Florida is going to go, I don't know these guys, Sabre, but boy, oh boy, I keep watching what they're posting on LinkedIn. They seem to be the only people that know anything about Long Island.
Right.
And that's how LinkedIn works. And, retailer, I'm watching LinkedIn for news. I get all my commercial real estate news from LinkedIn and Twitter, somewhat instantaneous. But retailers you can go on, and I'll show you this offline about, you can say, for me, VP of leasing, and go into people and do search, and I can, just in the grocery line, you can do real estate manager. So add to your 5,000 contacts the avatar client you're looking for.
You can add them or just request them.
No, you can request them,
but how do you search that? Did you know?
I didn't know that. Oh, so awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do.
For me, it's mostly inbound, and that's
Yeah. Well, you got to change that.
Right.
So,
Me too.
But again, the retailers are on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And they're looking. You have to say, tell me, just throw out you don't want it. So if you want a retailer, you just have to think, what does this retailer want? Like, I didn't know, what I learned today? That Amazon is going into Long Island City, which is in Manhattan. I thought it was in Long Island.
It's in Queens, so yeah.
And
one of the 5 boroughs.
Correct.
But I thought, remember when I said, oh, how exciting for you.
Yeah. Well, we work Long Island City, so it is still very exciting.
But I thought it was, and they're
Correct.
like, that's but
right.
whoever, there are people like me
Right.
thinking Amazon, Long Island. So
Right.
you guys should do a LinkedIn post, the difference between Long Island City
Yeah.
and Long Island. And you're the perfect person to talk about that. And this is information that is important because I'm looking like an idiot out
It's
there.
very funny because Russell, we had a meeting a few weeks ago about Long Island City because Russell has a team of brokers that he manages that work only Queens, and this is a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
This is a very big deal. And
It's a
he
huge,
lives right
you're
there.
the
yeah.
perfect guy. You could be
Yeah.
on the sidewalk.
Exactly.
Hi, right? And then
Yeah.
you could do a video, and then you can do a written thing. And again, there are retailers right now are confused like me.
Sure.
That are from California and don't know the difference.
Right.
Okay. And then there's some that are not confused, but want to start getting some information.
We're going to wrap this up with one last. We're having
Okay.
so much fun that
We are.
we could go on forever. One last question. If there was a movie about your life, who would play you?
Oh my
It's our
gosh.
favorite question.
So everyone says that Helen Hunt and I look like I look like Helen
I
Hunt.
get that.
And then I don't know the woman that played Dharma and Greg. Are you guys
Sure.
too young? So
No.
I don't know Jenna Elf.
Yeah, of
I met
course.
her once.
So
Talking
the-
about celebrities, so many
So
celebrities.
those are the two people who people go. Has anyone ever told you so?
Yeah.
I would pick someone that I supposedly look like.
Sure.
There you go. Fair enough. Awesome. Well, we'll let you go eat dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're hungry. I'm hungry.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank you, obviously, for
Thank
going out of
you.
your way to make it here. The second try around.
And she has her purse.
And listen, so where can people find you on social media?
So Beth Azor, YouTube, Beth Azor Facebook, and Beth Azor LinkedIn.
And where can they find the book? Don't Say No to the Prospect.
Don't-
Say no for the prospect.
Don't say no for the prospect.com or my website, bethazor.com.
For the prospect, not to the prospect.
Right.
That makes a lot more sense. Excellent.
joking.
All right. Well, listen, everybody, go follow Beth, check her out, and we still need to get you into Sabre to do some coaching. So we're gonna make that happen. And I urge everybody else to do the same. She's amazing, and you're leaving a lot of deals and money on the table without hiring her.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Azor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.